Glasses up.
Alright. Oops, sorry.
No worries, the coaster stick.
Right.
Hey everybody, we wanted to give you one last little thing before we send you on your way into the bright 2015.
Into the abyss this next year.
Which could be great or awful. Depends on what you have in store. But we read a lot of books for the show, but also kind of in general. And I just wanted to kind of give each one of us give you a recommendation of something we read this week that was influential in our lives. For me, the book I read was called Drawing for the Right Side of the Brain. I've always wanted to draw and thought I couldn't. We talked a little bit about this in the Malcolm Gladwell book. Was it one of the 40,000 hours, 10,000 hours?
Mm-hmm.
Outliers. We talked about this in Outliers, kind of what does talent mean, and I think people look at drawing as one of those things of like, you just either can draw or you can't. It's a talented thing. As in the Outliers book, you can learn just about any skill if you put some time to it, and we'll put a link in the show notes, but this book has kind of found a way for people that thought they could never draw to actually make very realistic drawings. And within a month or two of reading this book, following the exercises, I went from, basically probably about what your youngest son level of drawing to, it was awful, to
your Facebook picture.
Yeah, like an awful little kid's drawing that would be on a refrigerator to drawing a pretty realistic representation of my hand. And it's...
Okay, now we'll intersperse in the video that picture. Now.
Right.
And it's not that I've got some gifting of God to be an artist. Maybe I do. If you want to buy
Your
my
gifting
painting,
of God is to grow an awesome beard.
which I can do very well. But this book kind of showed me that there's a way to do that. That there's a way to kind of you can take a little bit of a shortcut to do that, and I really enjoyed that. Was there a book that you read in 2014 that stood out to you?
Right. There was a book, and it's a Christian theme book. Mm-hmm. It's by David Wilkerson. It's called "Have You Felt Like Giving Up Lately?" Mm. And it's basically based around people who are believers in God, but they've come to the end of their rope and whatever they're dealing with, whether it's work, a relationship, dealing with your children, that kind of thing. And what it did for me is it put things in perspective in the sense that I'm not the only one that's going through this situation by myself, that there are people who are professionals, pastors, people who go out, their job is to counsel other people, and they have to deal with the same everyday stress that you do, and it talks about how sometimes you just have to be patient and wait for God to make things in the right way, because he's not going to put something together that's a mess, because that's not how he operates. One of the examples he gave was about a woman who was going through divorce, and she wanted to reconcile with her husband. She loved him very much. And she was talking to her pastor and saying how, you know what, I can't deal with this. I'm going to go out and I'm going to tie one on, and I'm just going to go out and start drinking and just put myself out there. And
she told her pastor that?
Yeah, she did. She told her pastor that.
Wow.
And so,
her honesty instead of bullshitting.
Right, exactly. And how is that? Is it good?
This is awesome.
It looks like it's really good. And so, but basically, she, the pastor tells her, number one.
You want to try it?
No, I'm good.
Sure?
Thank you. I'm fine.
Okay.
Thank you. That God isn't going to put or help you put this back together because you're not ready for this. You're talking about going out drinking, starting these bad habits, going out with all these men, being wild. He's like, you have to get your heart and yourself and your mind together, because, if you come back together with your husband now, it's going to be a mess. You're going to be torn apart because of these awful things that you've gone out and done. And he might not want you back after knowing you've been out, sleeping around, drinking, acting crazy. So you need to get yourself back together and just try to get help for this situation and work it out, and through prayer. And if God decides that he wants this to work, then it ultimately will work out. But you can't just give up like that by going out on these deep ends and hurting yourself. And perhaps, it's, one of those things where you have to move on to something else, but you have to, it kind of gives you the idea of what they talk about, so where God closes the door, he opens the window, kind of thing. And, that's just part of it. But like I said in the beginning, what I loved about the book is that it made you realize in the end that you're not the only one that's going through problems, and that nobody has a magical answer to life's problems, and you just can't give up. You have to keep moving on and be prayerful about it, and just learn lessons along the way to apply to make your life better later on.
I like that. Sounds like a pretty encouraging book.
It is. It definitely is.
Besides enjoying the local Thai food of Orange County, was there a book
You have to stop eating for this video.
was there? Brian was really hungry. We've been drinking. This is how we do things on this show.
I need to be able to drive home.
We got to
after
drive
this.
home. Was there a book? I know you read quite a few books this year. Was there one that stood
Yeah, I
out?
read a lot of books. So I was just thinking, like, what's the big one? I think the one that probably had the most influence this year. I didn't read anything that like changed who I am, but I think the one that probably had the most influence on me this year was oh man, now I'm blanking on the title. It's the book about myth. The story.
I have that book on my shelf. I can go grab it right now. It's hang on. Keep talking about it. I'll find the title.
Yeah. So anyway, it's this book about. It's about myths and myths that we tell ourselves in culture and the structure of myths and basically, winning the story wars. See, that's a complicated title. That's why I couldn't remember. I remember the picture here, the screenness. And it's basically, it covers a lot of stuff, but it's about story and myth, and all great stories and myths kind of follow a very precise structure in order to resonate with the human spirit. But then it also goes down this road of marketing, and gives you a lot of insight into marketing and how it works. And it's mostly based on inadequacy and developing inadequacy within people to say you're not good enough. But you set that expectation first of like, you're not good enough, you're inadequate. But here's this product we're going to sell you so that you will be adequate. And because those inadequacies often resonate with us, we're like, yeah, I need that product. I need to buy.
Is that why you bought the book?
Yeah.
Listerine was the one they used in the book.
Yeah. The bad breath was never a thing in like the history of humanity. So Listerine had to develop the inadequacy of having bad breath and offending other people and other people not wanting to kiss you, especially that opposite sex kind of thing, in order to sell this product. And now, people are all the time drinking mouthwash precisely because you don't want to offend other people, especially the opposite sex and potential suitors with your terrible breath. So you buy Listerine, and there's a whole category which is, they call it inadequacy marketing, which is basically all marketing. This is how good marketing works, is developing these inadequacies. And that was like a huge light bulb for me. But also just understanding the structure of stories and what they call the hero's journey. And so then as I've read the Bible, after having read the Story Wars, when I read the Bible, I'm sort of like rereading it through the hero's journey and understanding people like Jesus and Moses and Elijah and David through the lens of these story wars, and it's like, it's been very illuminating. So that's probably the most influential book I've read this year. But I do feel like this year hasn't been a year of me reading I haven't read any super earth-shattering books. That hasn't been this year.
Yeah, I'll piggyback on that. I read that book earlier this year too. Great book, and
I can start eating.
Brian can go back to that pad thai. It is kind of targeted for folks in business and marketing, but I think there's a lot to learn about yourself, kind of. And the hero's journey is something that George Lucas did when he developed Star Wars. I mean, it's the classic tale of Frodo. I mean, it's every big
basically
story.
Any good story in human history follows the hero's journey.
Even our podcast last week, I'm being serious, of the Unbroken,
Right.
that has the hero's journey. I mean, it was a real story, but that's kind of, the hero's journey is something that the story that mankind has told for thousands of years, right?
Right.
It's the
Okay, so for people who haven't read this, there is a precise structure. It's not just a hero going through a journey. There's a very precise structure of they do this, then they do this, then they do this, then they do this, and then he breaks it down as a whole wheel to come to circle back around to where they originally started.
Yeah, these are all. Well, I'll put links in the show notes here for all these books. But I guess part of what we want to do in this podcast is help encourage you guys to read books. We talked about this when we first brushed on the show. Is that there's a weird thing in our culture, we don't read books anymore.
Right. And that's just this horrible thing.
Why would you read when there's so many good shows on Netflix?
Well, exactly. Yeah.
Is there any more food to put in your mouth? But it's people just don't get concepts. They don't grasp ideas. Because they don't read anymore. They have other people read to them, and they get these they misconstrue things. In other words, back in the day when you had to read like the Iliad, the Odyssey, and like Catcher in the Rye when you were in high school, you realize that people like Holden Caulfield, who was the main character, that if you were a 15, 16-year-old boy reading this, you were like, he's got the same weird thoughts that I have. He's going through all of this nonsense, trying to figure out who he is and how he relates to the rest of the world. But these kids now, they don't have that. They just have other people tell them how they should relate to the world, and they should, drink and smoke weed and have people say do. Anyway, but that's.
By the way, prediction: smoking weed will be legal within 5 years.
And the American country, as a top-tier country, won't be in existence within 20. That's mine. We'll be around, but China will rule because they have rules against things like that.
And my prediction for 2015 is that you guys will read more books. I really, maybe drink more alcohol too, depending on what your ilk is in life. But I guess I want to say thank you to you guys so much for watching our show. It means a lot to us to see that view count on there. If you wouldn't mind doing us a favor, just maybe hitting the share button on there or throwing it up on Facebook for your friends to enjoy. This is kind of a service born out of something that we enjoy doing, which is drinking alcohol and reading books, which is probably a hobby that we're all very good at a lifetime of experience, probably more so in the reading. But nonetheless, we want you guys to read books, and if there's a book that you have enjoyed, please put it in the show notes and let us know. We're always looking for great books, especially if it's a short book, because, man, we're trying to crank out these episodes, and you throw up some, 1,200-page book. We all have stuff to do. It's not like,
we have other jobs.
Yeah, we got other jobs. Being a professional podcaster has not paid well yet, but it could. If you'd like to sponsor the show, we'd be open to that. But kind of as a closing note, thank you guys so much for coming along on this journey with us and drinking and reading books with us. And I promise we've got some great things in store for 2015. Thank you so much. We'll see you very soon.